Welcome to Testify. Today we take a look at the Book of Zephaniah. Zephaniah lived during the final decades of the southern kingdom of Judah, when King Josiah had attempted to bring about real change in the land by removing idols and restoring the temple to the worship of Israel's God alone. By that point, however, Israel was already too far gone, as the worship of other gods was too entrenched in the people's lives. Josiah's pride led him to a tragic death on the battlefield, and so Jerusalem was set on a collision course with Babylon. Zephaniah had seen all this coming, and had been warning the leaders of Jerusalem for years. Zephaniah chapter 1 to chapter 2a. God's judgment on Judah and Jerusalem. Zephaniah describes how God's good world is going to descend back into disorder and darkness, as shown in Genesis, is similar to how Jerusalem's world is going to end. All of the city's institutions for worshiping the gods of the Canaanites will be destroyed. All the leaders who perpetrated injustice, all the economic centers where crooked lending and borrowing took place, all of it will be gone. God will allow a great army to come and take out Jerusalem. It's interesting that Zephaniah never mentions whose army God will use to bring his judgment. We know from the books of Micah and Habakkuk that it's Babylon, but Zephaniah never mentions that because he wants to highlight God's role in orchestrating the rise and fall of nations. Zephaniah's hope is that any in the city would seek the Lord. He says that these are the faithful remnant, who can be spared if they repent. Zephaniah chapter 2b to chapter 3a. God's judgment on the nations and Jerusalem. In the second section, Zephaniah widens his focus to include the nations around Judah, the Philistines, Moabites, Ammonites, and even the Assyrians. He accuses them all of corruption, violence, and arrogance and predicts that they will fall before Babylon. The leaders, prophets, and priests of Israel are so corrupt, violent, and estranged from their God that he doesn't even recognize them as his people anymore. The section ends with God's final decision. He's going to gather up all nations, including Jerusalem, and pour out his burning indignation. God's justice becomes a consuming fire, devouring evil from the land. Zephaniah 3b to chapter 9. Hope for the nations and Jerusalem. This is some really intense imagery, so the following line that brings us into the final part of the book comes as a surprise. This burning fire of divine justice is not aimed at total destruction. Rather, it will purify the nations and Jerusalem itself. God says that he will heal and transform the rebellious nations into a unified family, and that, after being purified, they will turn from their evil and call upon the name of the Lord. These images point to the fulfillment of God's promise to Abraham from Genesis 12, that he would find a way to bless the nations and Jerusalem as well. The conclusion of the book focuses on the restoration of a new Jerusalem at the center of the other nations. God's presence will be there along with the faithful remnant that's been humbled and transformed by God's mercy. This remnant is called to sing and rejoice, and, in a striking image, we're told that God is a poet who sings as well. The closing poem ends with powerful images of God gathering up into his family the outcast, the poor, and the broken, exalting them into a place of honor. Zephaniah forces us to hold together two aspects of God's character, his justice and his love, to discover that together they contain the future hope for our world. And that brings us to the end. Please join us for more.